Thank you again to all of our speakers, and happy to answer any questions. I'll give the hard ones to Mr. Langevin.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure. Congressman, Pat Ford Coalition Radio Network. I've got two questions. The city of Woonsocket activists, I should say the city of Woonsocket has drawn considerable ire from activists with regard to the failure of the city of Woonsocket to engage in their first tranche of federal money, any relief for housing, any relief for, any of the social issues that are the bane of most major northeastern cities. Do you have any comment on that in terms of the intent of the program?
Well, I mean, I think it's important. All of the provisions that are in the Build Back Better, and frankly, the investments we made in the bipartisan infrastructure bill and the American Rescue Plan. The intention is, of course, to help folks first through the rescue plan to get through the pandemic and to crush the virus. The recovery package, which is the bipartisan infrastructure bill and Build Back Better, is for us to recover and to recover in an inclusive way, particularly has been mentioned women and particularly people of color who have been devastated by this pandemic. And so I think it's the hope and the intention that this money get out as quickly as possible to help families who are struggling with, particularly as Congressman Landry mentioned, the increases in costs at the grocery store and at the gas pump. So it's more important than ever that this money and this help get out. Housing remains a critical issue in Rhode Island and places all across the country. So the whole idea, of course, is to be sure it's done right and done well, with real accountability, but obviously to get out as quickly as possible because people are hurting right now. And so, I think there are some communities that have been very successful in moving quickly, some not as quickly. I think we will all be happy when the state of Rhode Island leads the nation in getting this federal money out as quickly as possible and getting the help to people who need it so desperately.
I've got to touch on one inflation question that's open to either of you. It's a staple of fundamental economics that increases in government spending and the money supply will lead to inflation. This is particularly true when resources are scarce, as they currently are as a result of the pandemic and disruptions in the supply chain. Inflation is rising dramatically. Do either of you worry that inflation will continue to significantly erode the purchasing power, well, quite frankly, of the very people you wish to help?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start that and I'll invite Jim to. Look, the inflation that people are seeing principally in two places, in gas prices and food, is real. And, I hear it from constituents all the time. I'm sure Congressman Landry does as well. The important thing is what is reflected in Build Back Better and the American Rescue Plan is designed to increase the income of families, working families, through tax credits, through covering costs that they currently cover in terms of universal pre-K and child care, and also things, like the child care tax credit, as well as lowering the cost of prescription drugs, lowering the cost of healthcare with additional premiums. So it's all about cutting costs, raising incomes, and making sure it's paid for by having people pay their fair share. I think most experts who have studied this, there are 17 Nobel Prize winning economists and Moody's Analytics that have affirmed that the Build Back Better Act will actually grow the economy without increasing inflation because it's paid for. And in fact, the bill, they have said, will ease inflationary pressures because it invests in long-term economic capacity to enhance the ability of more people to participate productively in the economy and to do so at higher wages with better benefits. So I think the long-term view of this is quite clear. I think the president is taking actions today, actually in releasing petroleum from the petroleum reserve that will help address the immediate problem. The president is taking dramatic steps to deal with the supply chain. I mean, most of this is driven by the pandemic and the consequences of that. So I think the president has been very smart to respond to the short-term challenges right away by executive action. But I think actually Build Back Better and the investments we're making, I agree with the 17 Nobel Prize winning economists that it will ease the inflationary pressures.
I'll just echo a lot of what David said. That is a short, medium, and long-term aspect to inflation, and I applaud the president for acting quickly where he can. Some of this is, in the short run, is still transitory. Inflation as a result of supply chain shortages, bottlenecks at the ports, truckers on the roads. We're still dealing with the pandemic. So as people are slow to come back to work, that has had an impact. The supply chain issues again at the ports, but the president has made sure that we've got the ports running 24/7. now, and that's going to ease pressures on the supply chain. We're hearing news reports even as of yesterday that the markets are seeing the easing of these bottlenecks and supply chains. So we're not out of the woods yet. The president, as David mentioned, is addressing the high cost of fuel right now by releasing supplies from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, flooding the market, if you will, with fuel supplies. That will help bring down the cost of everything from home heating oil to gas prices for the short term. Obviously, the long term, or medium and long term, we transition to a green economy. People are going to be driving electric cars more than using gas to power their cars. That in of itself, again, is a medium to long term solution to end high energy costs and such, and then transition over to alternative other fuel sources with wind and solar. Is going to help add supply to our energy needs that will help bring down costs of energy. But again, there's a short, medium, and a long-term plan to this. The Build Back Better plan and the executive actions that the president's taken is designed to address these things. But I understand, we understand that the American people are feeling the pain at the pump right now. They're feeling the supply chain issues and the high costs in commodities, and we're looking at it. We leaving no stone unturned to address these things now.
Thank you.
No, one additional thing I would just add is, the other issue which is real here, and has gotten worse during the pandemic, is, the economic consolidation and concentration of these large companies. And there's lots of evidence that they are taking, these gigantic corporations are taking full advantage of this pandemic to gouge consumers and to generate kind of record profits. And so part of this also is restoring competition in a variety of markets. The president directed the chair of the FTC to do a thorough and quick analysis as to whether that's happening, particularly in the petroleum area. But I think we're seeing that too, this sort of, sadly, this corporate greed that is taking full advantage of a public health epidemic to generate record profits and jack up prices. So we're battling that as well.
Will you then be, just to follow on that, will you be looking for significant tax reform in the upcoming Congress? And because so many of these quote unquote profits are generated by the hodgepodge, the quilt work of federal tax laws, is reform on the horizon?
Yeah, well, I mean, what's very exciting is in the Build Back Better Act, there is substantial corporate tax reform with a global minimum tax for corporations, which is going to be incredibly valuable, both in preventing offshoring of American jobs, removing the incentive to move American jobs overseas, and also ensuring that corporations pay their fair share. So we've done that in the Build Back Better Act. What I also think we need, and I know the president's deeply committed to this, is we need to really vigorously enforce antitrust laws and restore competition in a variety of sectors of our economy that will make a real difference in driving down price, creating more innovation, protecting consumers, protecting workers. And the president's assembled a great team: Jonathan Cantor at the DOJ, Lena Khan at the FTC, Tim Wu at the National Economic Council, who all understand deeply the importance of competition. So I think that's the other part of the answer.
Yeah, and making sure that big corporations and wealthy individuals are paying their fair share is the right thing to do. And let's face it, the corporations and high net worth individuals, they weren't necessarily not paying their fair share because they were doing the wrong thing. They were taking advantage of the tax loopholes and the way the tax laws were written. President Biden is determined to change that and make sure that the loopholes are closed, that there's certain minimums that are in place so that corporations and high net worth individuals, wealthy individuals, are paying their fair share. It's the right thing to do, and we should expect no less.